8:15, happy Aloha Saturday. The Hawaiian Council, formerly CNHA, is preparing to host its annual conference just outside of Seattle next week. We're joined by our Hawaii Island contributor and Hawaii Radio our host, Naka to talk about big topics of the conversation that'll take place in Washington State. Good morning. Aloha kakayaka.
Aloha kakiaka. It's so great to be talking with you this Saturday morning, Billy. How are you doing?
Mike Kai. So a big topic is diaspora, I guess, right?
Yeah, diaspora. You know, whenever this convention moves outside of Hawaii, that's always one of the big topics of conversation is the diaspora or the non-resident Native Hawaiian population.
Yeah, I remember a couple of years ago, the convention was, let me see, that was in Vegas. And then one of the big topics was, should Hawaiians in the continental U.S. or mainland, I guess, be part of the law hui, right?
Yeah, so this is the thing that we always have to say is that there are more Native Hawaiians living outside of Hawaii than live in Hawaii. And this is one of these things that Native Hawaiian communities have been wrestling with for such a long time. Now, that panel that you had just mentioned, you know, should, and they actually they used the term mainland in there, you know, should mainland Hawaiians be part of the Hui? That panel featured Patrick Makuakane, the Kumuhulu, who is thriving outside of Hawaii, and many other Native Hawaiians who have really found a place where they're comfortable outside of Hawaii. But there was a lot of contention in that discussion. You know, there were panelists from Hawaii who could never see themselves accepting any sort of situation where they were living outside of Hawaii, while those non-resident Hawaiians were struggling with issues of acceptance, particularly from those of us that still live here in Hawaii.
Can we talk for a couple of moments about diaspora? Talk about the label for a moment.
Yeah, you know, I have it out for that term. You know, it's an ancient Greek word that means to scatter, and it describes people who live away from their homeland. You know, for example, you know, like Indians and Chinese, you know, they have huge populations living outside of India and China. But unlike Hawaiians, they are the majority in their homelands. And so I've been on a search for a better term than diaspora. You know, and I'm inspired. There's a Chinese slang term that's for people that leave China for their schooling, but then return to China. They're called sea turtles.
No, sea turtles voyage across the ocean and they return home, right?
Yeah, and I like that. And it's so evocative. And in Hawaiian, you know, Olelo Hawaii, we have such a lyrical language, and I'm hoping that we can find a more creative and academic term than diaspora. You know, when I was part of the diaspora, like, I did not care for that label. You know, I wish that there was a term that could promote, you know, more understanding and belonging, and that's really what's needed for these communities. Okay. You know, we have Kona and, you know, poetry. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Sorry. Yeah, so we have Kona and poetry that are just, you know, that really help these populations come together. You know, we're Polynesians, right? You know, we have oceans that are in between us, but those oceans aren't obstacles. You know, they're how we're connected.
Now, if somebody wants to listen more about this, you're actually going to tackle this over at Hawaii Radio Hour coming up tomorrow, right?
Yeah, well, we're going to talk a little bit about, you know, some of these issues that are going to come up. And I'll be at CNHA, or at the Seattle Convention. I'll be moderating a panel about this. And, you know, we'll talk about this quite a bit. This is not a conversation that's going to be, you know, fading into the sunset, unfortunately. This is something that we're going to have to grapple with for a while. But, yeah, we're going to be on Hawaii Public Radio tomorrow at 4 p.m. And we hope that people tune in and hear some great mele and some mo'olelo.
All right, it's going to be on HPR1. Naka Nathaniel from Mokuoke'awe. Have fun at the convention. We'll see you next weekend. Let's get you back over to Annalisa Burgos.
Thanks, Billy. It's 8:19.